All right, so here we go. We got more of the crisis at the border. You can call it a migrant crisis. You can call it a refugee crisis. I've seen arguments over the semantics in terms of what words to use. Now, this is you're about to see the video. It's actually a short news clip, but here you have a Border Patrol agent. They're sort of threatening migrants when they're on horseback. People were saying, oh, they're whipping the Haitian migrants. Now, a bunch of pedantic losers are like, that's not a whip. Okay, it's a horse rein, but they're using it as a whip. So don't think you're, actually people into a corner here because you just look like a jackass if you're, literally and factually. And then what the thing is if they're using it to whip, then it doesn't really matter if you call it a whip or horse reins or whatever, right? Well, they would say no, but they'd be wrong. Anyway, here are Border Patrol agents really treating these migrants and refugees terribly. Let's take a look at this news report, and then I'll come back and break it down further.
The White House condemned U.S. Border Patrol agents on Monday who were seen using a whip-like cord to block Haitian migrants carrying supplies into the U.S. from Mexico. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said she had seen some of the footage, calling it unacceptable.
We just saw this footage. It's horrible to watch. I just have to get more information on it. I can't imagine what the scenario is where that would be appropriate. I'm certainly not suggesting that, but we've just seen the footage earlier this morning.
Reuters drone footage captured hundreds of mostly Haitian migrants crossing back and forth between Ciudad Acuña in Mexico and the sprawling camp across the border in Del Rio, Texas, to buy food and water that was short in supply on the U.S. side. Reuters witnesses saw mounted officers in cowboy hats blocking the paths of migrants, and the apparent use of horse reins swung to threaten the migrants. At the White House, Psaki was pressed over whether disciplinary action would be taken.
Is it the president's stance or the White House's stance that whoever these border agents are using what seems to be whips on migrants, that they would be fired or at least never be able to do that again?
Of course they should never be able to do it again. I don't know what the circumstances would be. It's obviously horrific, the footage.
U.S. Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz said the incident was being investigated to make sure that there was not an unacceptable response by law enforcement. While visiting Del Rio on Monday, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the long reins are used by mounted officials to, quote, ensure control of the horse, but also vowed to investigate the facts. The camp under a bridge spanning the Rio Grande has become the latest flashpoint for U.S. authorities seeking to stem a flow of migrants fleeing gang violence, extreme poverty, and natural disasters in their home countries. Hundreds of migrants have been turned around on the Mexico side, leaving uncertainty whether they'll be deported on flights organized by U.S. authorities. Mayorkas said he expects between 1 to 3 daily repatriation flights back to Haiti, and stressed in a news conference that if individuals try to enter the U.S. illegally, they will be returned.
Wow. So, all right, let's dive into this. So first to the person whipping and threatening to whip and using the horses in an aggressive manner. There's another video where he says, like, this is why your country's shit because you treat your women like this. Something to that effect. I don't think I have it verbatim, but that's paraphrasing him. Listen, simple answer on that front. Fire whoever that agent is and whoever the agents are who are, like, threatening the migrants with their horses. And the fact of the matter is this. There's no way to talk around this because we know it's true. Those people aren't a threat. They're not threatening them. They're carrying food back from Mexico because there's not enough food here in the U.S., and so they have to go to the other side and get food and then try to come back. So now you might not like the fact that the Haitian migrants are here. This is a huge problem, clearly, but you can't say that they're threatening the Border Patrol agents. They're just not doing that. One of them was carrying food and then dropped it because, you know, the Border Patrol agent was sort of being aggressive towards the migrant while he was in the water holding food. So it's needless aggression. And the fact of the matter is there's pictures of this guy smiling in a really deranged way where you get the sense this is the kind of person who was attracted to this job in the first place. There are plenty of people who, for all the wrong reasons, want to get involved in various kinds of law enforcement. We all know it's true. It's a politically incorrect truth, but it's a truth nonetheless. Now, are there some people who get involved for the right reasons? I'm sure. But this is somebody who's in it for the wrong reasons. He's been waiting for a moment like this to be able to do something like this, to abuse his authority and his power. So I would just fire those border agents who are doing that. I don't think that one's that difficult. Now, to the rest, there's a lot to say about the rest of it, and we covered a lot of this the other day, but Joe Biden right now is mass deporting them. Now, a lot of people either don't know that or know that but are sort of misleading about it. He's using Title 42, which was put into place under Trump. Basically, the argument is there's a pandemic, so we can sort of skip the whole due process thing, not give people their day in court and their hearing, and we're just going to mass deport a lot of people. And like all day, every day, you got these deportation flights happening. Now, there are some who are claiming refugee status who are granted the refugee status. One thing I saw was like pregnant women, for example. So pregnant women and their families, it's being, to them, the point's being made, well, it would be dangerous and you'd effectively be, I guess, having a very uncertain future for a baby who might just about be ready to be born. So they're doing a slightly more humanitarian thing when it comes to women who are pregnant and those families. They're getting granted refugee status. But to be honest, it's not clear who they're granting the refugee status to and who they're not. So again, most of these people are just being mass deported. And there was a judge who just said, well, you can't really do that. This Title 42 thing is illegitimate. It was illegitimate under Trump. It's illegitimate under Biden. By the way, Biden has already, at this point in Biden's presidency, he's already mass deported more people than Trump had in his 4 years. Trump, it was like 400,000. Biden, it's like 690,000. So he is doing the mass deportations. Very few are getting to stay here. But listen, is Biden going to get credit for that from the right? Who this is what they prefer. This is their ideal approach. They loved it under Trump, and that's sort of what Biden is mostly doing here. Are any of them going to give him credit? Of course not. Of course, you see Fox News going after Biden 24/7 over this. And of course, to the left, are the Democrats going to really point out that Biden is doing effectively what Trump did and call him out for it? Well, some of the more left flank are doing that, but most of the Democrats are either not saying anything or they would even defend Biden's actions on this front. Like I told you guys the other day, the only real answer I have is you need to have more immigration judges, have more resources dedicated to fixing this problem and having a faster process, a better process, a more streamlined process. Now, I get that's difficult because now you have over 15,000 people and more coming that are under that bridge. So what do? Well, the last thing you should do is sit around, and the last thing you should do is just mindlessly mass deport. And that gets to the final point on this, which is, why are they coming here? Listen, they just got smacked with a bunch of natural disasters. They just had a coup where the president was overthrown, and there's already evidence that we played a role in that coup. So this is the classic U.S. move. It's like, we play a role. Oftentimes, it's the main role. I don't know if you could say it's the main role in Haiti, but oftentimes we play a role in destabilizing these governments, having these governments in the global south overthrown. And then when people come here and try to escape what's going on, which we're largely responsible for, we feign outrage. We're like, oh, how could you? I mean, the biggest example is how many migrants and refugees do you think we've gotten over the years because of the drug war, because of the cartel violence and the gang violence that's associated with the drug war, that these problems wouldn't exist if we simply legalized, taxed, and regulated drugs. But because we want to be tough on drugs and do the drug war, well, there are consequences to that. One of the consequences is you have narco states in the global south, and you have people living in violence. Oftentimes in Honduras, there was more violence there than in Iraq at the peak of the Iraq war. So of course people are going to try to escape from that. Duh. You also have, honestly, our direct coups of many countries. That's going to lead to people coming here. Our trade policy, where we outsource good-paying U.S. jobs and put the jobs in Mexico for one, and then people who were making a living with their own small businesses in Mexico are then sort of put out of business and forced to work in worse conditions. And a lot of people flee that because they want better jobs and opportunities, so they come here. There's so many ways in which our policies directly or indirectly impact people in these countries, then they flee to us, and then we're like, well, fuck off. You got to get out of here. You can't do that, man. You absolutely have to change the policies up so as to not create refugees and migrants. Guys, I don't know if you know this, but most people don't really want to leave everything they've ever known. Some do, but the overwhelming majority don't. And so when people end up doing that, it's not some indication that they're coming here to commit crime or whatever. They're looking for a chance at a half-decent life. That's the reality. Now, listen, if I'm president, how am I going to approach this? Like I said, you got to devote more resources to it. You got to have more immigration judges. You got to streamline the process. But what I would say is you have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. People on the left are generally going to say, and again, maybe you say this is unfair. I don't know. You have to talk to everybody on the left and all the elected officials to get a sense of it. But I think most on the left would say, hey, they're all refugees, let them in. Okay, then you'd have most people on the right who I think would say, deport them all. They have no right to be here. They would ignore the fact that we've contributed in many ways to destroying the regions, which then leads to the migrant and refugee flows. Me personally, I probably wouldn't do either one of those things. Like I told you guys the other day, so yes, we are a nation of laws and we have to enforce those laws, but we also should be reasonable and humanitarian and logical and rational in how we handle migrants and refugees. So everybody should get their day in court. Everybody should get their hearing. And then you have to decide on a case-by-case basis who has a reasonable claim to be let in as a refugee and who doesn't. And I don't know what the numbers would be. Would it be 50-50? Would it be 70-30 in the direction of staying? 70-30 in the direction of deportation? I don't know. But suffice to say, what's happening now is unacceptable. And we don't have nearly enough resources. We don't have nearly enough immigration judges. And but by the way, this is a little peek into our future as well. Because with climate change, there's going to be way more refugees. I mean, the Middle East is literally going to be uninhabitable because it'll be too hot there. What happens then? Well, the Middle East empties out. And where are they going to go? That's just one example. There was a place that just got walloped with 2 hurricanes recently. A lot of people fled from there. What are we going to do? You know, what do you do? But that's my take on it. And of course, the crystal point, which I made you guys the other day, I think is a very good point, which is everybody's also a hypocrite on this because if these people were from Cuba, the Republicans would say, swing open the doors, let them in. Because nominally, the people who escaped Cuba hate communism, and so they view them, these will be Republican voters, so they want to let them in. And on the Democratic side, people would be screaming bloody murder if this exact same thing was happening under Trump. They would. But since it's under Biden, it's not nearly as much outrage. So everybody's a hypocrite. It's a very difficult situation. There aren't many good answers. I'm just trying to give you guys what I think is the least bad answer.